This is Green Street, the environmental health show. GreenStreetNews.org, Patti and Doug Wood, and our worldwide network of medical professionals, scientific researchers, authors, engineers, reporters, and others here every week to help keep you up to date on what's happening in the world that can impact your health and the health of your family. Welcome back. You can't really surf the internet, stream a show, or watch TV without being bombarded with ads for wireless providers. Such and such company has the best wireless network in the country, or the most coverage, or the best plan, or offers the best new phone. One ad features a family of 4 that has 18 wireless devices, and they want more connectivity. What you won't see or hear on streaming platforms or TV are reports of the emerging science linking exposure to wireless radiation, the kind emitted by every wireless communication device, with a growing list of serious human health impacts. So today on Green Street, you're going to hear one family's story of cell phones and cancer, and then you'll hear from 3 experts who've studied wireless radiation and its impacts on human health. But first, I want to play you a radio spot which we produced a few years ago, but which most commercial radio stations were afraid to play. We wanted to raise awareness of this issue with the general public, but the stations were afraid they would lose the advertising revenue from their telecoms. The spot is deliberately provocative, designed to make you think about how you use your phone. Our friend, the actress Nan Sirianni, did the voiceover, and I think you'll agree it's pretty powerful. Here it is.
I have cancer. I can't believe I'm saying it. I mean, cancer is something that happens to somebody else, right? I'm careful about what I eat. I get plenty of exercise and rest. I don't drink a lot or smoke anything. So I was pretty surprised when I got this lump on the side of my face. I figured it would go away, but it didn't. Finally, I went to see my doctor. He did a biopsy, and it came back positive. Parotid gland tumor. I didn't even know I had a friggin' parotid gland. He asked me if I used my cell phone a lot. I said, yeah, doesn't everybody? He said, do you hold the phone against your head? I'm like, how else do you talk on the phone? Then he says, and you usually hold your phone on the side where the tumor is, right? I just sat there. I couldn't believe it. The next day, a friend told me to look under the legal section on my phone settings, and right there, it says, do not hold this device against your body. I want to know, how did they get away with this?
How indeed. That spot was rejected by most of the stations we contacted about running it, and we had some funding to do it, but they said no. Not surprising, I suppose, given the advertising clout of the big wireless companies.
Everybody has a cell phone. They've become extensions of ourselves, literally and figuratively. A recent survey of couples revealed that almost half of American adults considered themselves addicted to their phones, while 71% said they checked their phones within 10 minutes of waking up. Walk down the street and see how many people you can find who are not either holding their phone in their hand or talking on it. We're obsessed. And curiously, at the same time, most people have a vague awareness that constant use of their cell phone may carry a degree of risk. Despite the efforts of the cell phone industry to sponsor and promote scientific studies that purport to show no risk, the fact is that the evidence of biological harm is piling up. Here's one family story.
Ellen Marks and her husband Alan didn't start out to be troublemakers or rabble-rousers. They lived in Southern California. Alan had gone to medical school but decided it wasn't for him, and he ended up in real estate development and sales. They had 3 kids. Life was good. His job required Alan to be in close contact with his customers. And when the first mobile phones came out, as clunky as they were like a dream come true. In the rough and tumble world of real estate, being in touch could make all the difference between winning and losing. Alan didn't hesitate.
He was an early adopter. I think it was, Mandy is now 36. I think she was about a year old. So that was 1985, that he got the big one, the big thing you carried around a brick book. And then he had the car phones. I remember we moved to the East Bay of San Francisco and real windy roads, and he got me a car phone because he was afraid I was going to get lost in the hills.
Ellen Marks, or Ellie as she's known to her friends, recalls those early days when mobile phones were new.
He would use it a lot in the car, driving around, which is probably one of the worst places. I used to get angry at how much he used. I threatened to throw that thing away a couple of times. So the sad part is that he's a really good man. He wanted to provide for his family and do the best. And then his personality started changing probably about 3 or 4 years before we knew that this thing was growing. In 2008, Alan was diagnosed with a oligodendroglioma. It's a brain tumor that was in his right frontal lobe. And he never had any symptoms other than personality changes, which I feel is important for people to know. If you see extreme changes in a relative or a friend, loved one, whatever, they really should get an MRI, because he had extreme changes, and his doctors apologized to me later that they didn't catch it. So anyhow, he was seemingly healthy other than that. He was 56 at the time. Went to bed the night before we were to leave for our youngest child's college graduation. The next day we lived in California. She was in Colorado. And about 2:00 in the morning, I heard him making strange noises, woke me up, and he was unconscious. And he was having a grand mal seizure, which I had never seen before, but I knew immediately what it was. It was horrific. His whole body was contorting, all that. So I called 911. Paramedics came, and it lasted a good 45 minutes till they got him off the bed and onto the gurney and all that. And they would say to him, his eyes were open, and I'd say, Alan, and nothing. And they'd say, Mr. Mark, squeeze my hand, nothing. He wasn't there. It was a really horrible experience. So anyhow, took him by ambulance to our local hospital in Walnut Creek, California. And within an hour, they told us that he had a brain tumor in his brain, in his right frontal lobe. They actually told him, go home and live with it for 5 years and die. Our oldest son, Zach, had interned for Senator Kennedy a couple of years prior to that in his private office and witnessed him holding 2 phones, one to each ear at the same time. He was always on it. People who work there heard about Zach's father and Kennedy and the coincidence. Zach was still in touch with people there, and they said, well, there's a rumor floating around the office that it could have been his cell phone use. I hadn't even thought about this before, but then I started turning on the TV, and there's Dr. Deborah Davis and Dr. Keith Black on Larry King Live talking about Kennedy and the possibility that it was his cell phone use. And all of this is while we're waiting for Alan to have his surgery, and we're just freaking out because they kept saying lethal brain tumor. I contacted Deborah Davis and Keith Black, and Deborah was amazing. She gave me a list of people. She said, send Alan's cell phone records and medical records to all these experts all over the world. And they all got back to me within a few weeks, and they said, it is more likely than not that your husband's glioma was caused by his long-term cell phone use. He had a grade 2 tumor. Grade 4 is the glioma that's the killer, the glioblastoma multiforme, which a lot of people, including Kennedy, have had. Alan was blessed with more years, and the sad part is, though, that I've come to know a lot of brain tumor patients, and it was really sad when one said to me, the only thing worse than dying from a brain tumor is living with one. One day I got a call from Congressman Kucinich, and he wanted to know if my husband could come to Washington, D.C. to testify. And I said, no, he's in no shape to do that post-surgery. And he said, well, will you do it? And I said, absolutely. So I was shocked that I was going to go testify to Congress. And everybody educated me. I was learning about the science and the corruption. I was just stunned to hear what had gone on all these years, because I, like the normal person, thought that if there was a danger to something that everybody's using, our government would take care of it. Very naive, because in reality, this is tobacco all over again. I did it September of 2008. I testified to Congress, and the FCC was right next to me. And when Congressman Kucinich asked them why they haven't changed their exposure limits since 1996, and mind you, this was 2008, and we're 14 years later now, and they still haven't changed, and they've been told to, he pointed fingers. He said, well, you guys haven't told us to do it. pointing to Congress. And he also made a comment during the question and answer period that the FCC does not have the scientific expertise to do this. So after testifying to Congress, I started hearing from so many other people in the same boat as us. People who had brain tumors and thought it was their cell phone, or their doctor told them it was probably their cell phone. And it was shocking to me how many people were affected by this, and they were young. Alan was 56 at the time. There were people in their 20s, 30s, 40s. There was one woman who called me. She was a real estate agent, and while she was in practice selling real estate, she kept a phone in each pocket. And her 4-year-old died from a glioma. And she thought that was the only reason she could think that her child would get a brain tumor, and the doctors agreed with her. Radiation is the primary cause of a primary brain tumor. And it used to be thought that it was just ionizing radiation. And now we know, with all the science that's out there, not the industry funded, the independent science, that non-ionizing radiation is causing brain tumors and other cancers and other deleterious health effects. So I vowed to take on this issue because I knew what it did to my family. And I saw what it was doing to other families. And I said, I can't walk away from this. So I met Nancy Pelosi in person once around 2009. I said, why isn't Congress doing anything about this? Oh, we don't know enough. So, you know, they know more now, but they knew a lot then too. And it's all about corporate greed and their, hold over our government and not putting public health first. I did work with Gavin Newsom. He wanted to do something on this in San Francisco. He was worried when his wife was pregnant. He saw her holding a cell phone to her abdomen. And I worked with the Environmental Working Group on that. And we did get legislation passed unanimously to post a warning at the point of sale. And the industry sued. This is what they do. We had 25 other cities and states waiting to do it. They were writing all of them, and they found out who they were. They were writing all of them letters threatening to sue before they even did anything.
Ellie's talking about a right-to-know law, which required that a warning be displayed where phones were sold, advising customers not to hold the phone directly against their bodies. The exact same warning that's included with every cell phone if you dig way down into the legal warnings buried deep inside. So just to be clear, the cell phone companies were threatening to sue any municipality that dared to say what the cell phone companies themselves were saying. They just didn't want anyone to think twice about buying or using a phone. They knew of the danger, and they wanted to control how much the public knew about it.
There was a lot of corruption that went on. I witnessed it firsthand. And the law was repealed 4 years later. And one of the lawyers who helped get it repealed was appointed a federal judge by Obama a few weeks later. Now, if you put the puzzle together, Obama was good friends with Tom Wheeler, who was head of the FCC at the time. And they knew we had 25 cities and states waiting to do this. So the puzzle pieces fit together. I got a phone call from Erin Brockovich one day. And my phone kept ringing, and I was working and I wasn't answering it. And finally I thought, I better answer this. I have no idea who it is. And she said, this is Erin Brockovich. And I said, no, who is this really? And she said, no. She said, I've been following your work and I want to talk to you about it. She said, I have an attorney for you who wants to take on the cell phone and brain tumor cases. Oh my gosh, okay. So she got him on the phone. His name is Hunter Lundy. And we went with him. And I've introduced many plaintiffs to him since, and he has met others too. And he took our case on in 2010. We're suing for some outrageous amount of money. I don't even know, 800 million or something like that. But it's not the money. Yes, these families do deserve some compensation. Their lives have been destroyed by this. But people need to know. And the fact that some of these cases began in 2001 and they're still going. Yes, that's a long time. However, these attorneys are putting their own time and financial resources into this. It validates the fact that there's something to this. They wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't real. By 2005, there were a couple of dozen brain cancer and product liability cases that remained active. And the defendants in those cases wanted them dismissed under federal preemption law. The defendants being AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, all of those, their attorneys, they said this is federally preempted. The FCC sets the exposure limits. There's no reason for these people to be suing and all that. However, the appellate court in the Fourth Circuit in Baltimore in 2004 said, nope, this is not preempted. And the cases moved forward. So that was one victory for the good guys. The industry then tried to take it to the Supreme Court in 2005, and they denied hearing it. So that meant that the circuit court ruling held, and the cases were not preempted. So the cases were remanded back to the states and eventually consolidated in DC Superior Court, which is the process that we're in now. The recent hearing that went for 2 weeks in Judge Alfred Irving's courtroom ended September 30th. What's happening now is that the attorneys on both sides must submit their closing arguments by Thanksgiving, and then Judge Irving will decide if the cases move forward to trial or not. Of course, I and the other plaintiffs and the attorneys who have worked so hard on this hope that they move forward. And you can bet that either way, there's going to be appeal after appeal after appeal after appeal. So, but eventually, hopefully we see some justice and some progress. You know, not everyone who uses a cell phone will get a brain tumor. I think it was 10% of smokers got lung cancer, but it's still a huge concern because we have an entire population of children, using them and growing up not knowing anything else.
Ellen Marks, founder of the California Brain Tumor Association and relentless advocate for public awareness of the dangers of cell phone radiation. And now we turn to a medical doctor who spent many years on the front lines of research into environmental exposures and human health. Dr. David Carpenter earned his medical degree at Harvard, spent several years at the National Institute of Mental Health and the Armed Forces Radiobiology Research Institute. He then helped found the School of Public Health at the University at Albany. A few years ago, we recorded a presentation by Dr. Carpenter on wireless radiation and health, where he offered a clear explanation of how radiofrequency radiation, or wireless radiation, can cause health problems in humans. Here now, Dr. David Carpenter.
What I'm going to talk about is the magnitude of the evidence that there are adverse health effects of these forms of radiofrequency radiation below that of visible light at intensities that don't just cook your brain or cook your potato. The International Agency for Research on Cancer is part of the World Health Organization. It's based in Lyon, France. And these are the ultimate authorities on what things cause cancer. And in 2011, they rated radiofrequency radiation as a possible human carcinogen. And that evidence was based primarily in the fact that people that talk on their cell phone for long periods of time and don't pay attention to the recommendations to keep it away from your head, but hold it right up against their head, which most of us do because no one knows about that fine print. If you talk on your cell phone for 10 years or more, multiple hours a day, your risk of developing brain cancer is sky high. And it's the worst kind of brain cancer, the glioblastoma. That's the kind Ted Kennedy had, John McCain had, Biden had, and all people that spent a lot of time on their cell phones. You can never say in one particular case that it was causative, but it's certainly suggestive. Now, the reason it wasn't a stronger recommendation at this time was that nobody had ever demonstrated that animals developed cancer from cell phone frequency radiations. That changed a year ago when the U.S. National Toxicology Program exposed rats for the duration of their lifetime to cell phone frequency radiations, and they developed the same two cancers that we see in people. Radiofrequency radiation at intense level causes cancer. Well, everyone thinks our government's going to protect us from any things that are dangerous. Well, think again. In the U.S., the Federal Communications Commission is the organization responsible for setting standards for our cell phones, for our Wi-Fi and things like that. Basically, the FCC says if your brain doesn't heat when you talk on a cell phone, or if your body doesn't heat when you're in a Wi-Fi environment, there's no problem. Well, it totally ignores an enormous body of evidence from scientists around the world that show there are multiple adverse health effects. Cancer's a big one. Men that hold a wireless laptop on their lap too long will have reduced sperm counts. That usually gets the men's attention. Women that put their cell phone in their bra have an elevated risk of breast cancer. Think about our lives. We are exposed to this radiation continuously. If your cell phone is on, it's communicating with the cell tower. If you talk on it, it's going to communicate much more. So the FCC has these limits, and we know those are wrong. Now, where did those limits come from? Well, they came from the engineering community and the physics community, not the health community. When Cindy Sage and I went to the FCC, they said, well, we don't have any health expertise. We get all of our advice from EPA and NIH and other health agencies. Well, those health agencies have no advice at all to give. EPA discontinued all of their research functions on electromagnetic fields. NIEHS hasn't had any activity on this issue for years. So the question that short-term exposure can cause thermal damage, yes, but even there, many cell phones exceed the guidelines, especially when people hold them to their ears. So we've got real problems in that many people unknowingly, they don't know this issue, and yet they're exposed at dangerous levels of radio frequency radiation. My colleague Dominique Belpomme in Paris has done some wonderful studies. We have all this evidence that people get cancer from electromagnetic fields, but until you show that animals get cancer, they didn't believe it. We have that evidence now. One other issue has been that there weren't clinical chemistry tests. You couldn't take a blood sample or urine sample and identify people that suffered from this syndrome of electrohypersensitivity. These are relatively non-specific symptoms. We all get headaches every now and then. We all feel like our brain doesn't work right, quite often. We all get tired. But when people find that if they go into the presence of high levels electromagnetic fields, those symptoms appear in spades. And many people are totally disabled because of their having to be in an environment where they're exposed. Dr. Belpomme and his colleagues have now found a whole series of tests in blood and urine. They distinguish people that have electrohypersensitivity from people that do not. It's a real disease, and it can be very disabling. And one of the big issues here is how do we protect people that have this illness? People that can't continue on the job they used to have because the environment is full of radio frequency fields that cause them to be ill. Or students that are electrosensitive that have to go to school, but the school has so much radio frequency radiation that the students get ill. You think about schools today. Most schools have Wi-Fi throughout the school. Now, it's very important that everybody have access to the net, that they learn to use it. It's a critical part of our society. But if you have 20 or 30 kids in a wireless computer classroom with one big router up there, those kids are basically in a mini microwave oven because all of the laptops are communicating. And is it any wonder that some of the kids become ill? I say no. One of the things that Dr. Belpomme has shown is that many of the people that are sensitive to electromagnetic fields are also sensitive to chemicals. And there are many people that have that syndrome that also have chronic fatigue syndrome or fibromyalgia. I've had a major study of Gulf War illness where veterans from the 1990 Gulf War developed the same set of symptoms, probably because of some environmental exposure. We don't know exactly what it is. There must be something in common with all of these things. And Dr. Belpomme's work has shown that some of these same clinical blood and urine assays are found in individuals with multiple chemical sensitivity. Now, not everyone is going to respond with the same symptoms. There's a variety of susceptibilities. There are probably a lot of people that have symptoms that don't recognize what they come from. But in schools, it's pretty clear when a child gets a headache every time he goes to school and recovers when they go home. Now, these are measurements taken in a meter that detects radiofrequency radiation. The top is from a school that has limited use of devices, and the bottom is from a school that has extensive use. Each of those peaks is a peak of radiofrequency radiation. And, one of the issues is the FCC standards will average those over long periods of time. We have increasing evidence that it isn't just the average overall that's important, it's the rapid on and off. And you see how many of those massive peaks there are there. Some schools, because of this idea that you have to make everybody accessible to the internet by their laptop, by their pad, by their cell phone, and that's the result in terms of exposure. As I've said, we're only now beginning to really rigorously diagnose it. Clinicians can certainly diagnose nonspecific symptoms, but how do you rigorously tie those symptoms to an exposure? Traditionally, when we talk about chemicals that cause cancer and symptoms, we take a blood test. We measure the chemical in the body. It's a relatively straightforward thing. It's not so simple here. That's why development of laboratory tests is very important. It's pretty well accepted by everybody in the field of cancer that if something causes cancer, there is no level of exposure that does not cause cancer. In other words, there's a linear dose response curve. Now, there may be an exposure that's so low that you can't actually measure the increase of cancer, but there's no threshold below which there's no risk. Obviously, there are electromagnetic fields in nature. Life evolved with some. What we've done in the last few years is dramatically increase our exposure, enormously. We didn't have Wi-Fi or cell phones 40 years ago. Cell phones were actually invented in the US, but they were first marketed in Scandinavia. So, we're doing an experiment on the human population. And now we're expanding around the world with 5G and putting these cell towers everywhere. Almost every school has Wi-Fi. Almost every school administrator is oblivious to the fact or don't want to hear that they may be putting their children at risk. I think that we have great problems with our elected representatives. Most of them are unaware of the issue, or if they're aware of it at all, they're aware that the telecommunications companies are giving them a lot of money to increase the outgrowth of 5G and other forms of exposure. The concerned citizens are usually not ones that can subsidize elected representatives. So the solution is to have the public informed, because our politicians respond when people bang on their door and say, I demand that you protect our health.
Dr. David Carpenter talking about wireless radiation and human health. One note to his presentation, the phrase electromagnetic hypersensitivity has now been replaced in many cases with the term electromagnetic radiation syndrome, or EMR syndrome. There's a new organization just getting off the ground to bring together all of those individuals who suffer from that syndrome, and we're looking forward to being able to announce that when it goes live in the next few weeks. Dr. Carpenter talked a lot about wireless radiation in schools and its potential impact on our kids. If you have kids or grandchildren in schools and you share that concern, or if your child suffers from headaches, dizziness, nausea, or general malaise while he or she is in the classroom, you might want to visit the website we've created for parents and school administrators. It's called techsafeschools.org. Again, techsafeschools.org, all one word. And there you'll find a lot of scientific information and policy ideas to help your school reduce the amount of radiation in classrooms without impacting any tech-based learning. Let me repeat that. The radiation levels in most classrooms can be significantly reduced by up to 90% without affecting connectivity. So again, that website is techsafeschools.org.
It can be hard to talk to kids about cell phones, especially teenagers, but sometimes we can get through with safety tips that are easy to understand and follow. Our cell phone card has been really popular with parents and child advocates, and our updated version has just arrived from the printer. It's a glossy printed card about the size of a business envelope, and on one side it has tips for reducing your exposure to cell phone radiation, and on the other side it has tips for reducing wireless radiation at home. We have a limited number of cards, but if you email us with your mailing address, we can send you 10 cards at no cost. Just go to our website at greenstreetnews.org, and on the contact page you'll find our email. Again, please include your name and your mailing address, and we'll send you 10 of the new cell phone cards in the mail. We hope that you'll find them useful.